And welcome to the Kale Houser Leadership Secrets podcast. Today it is my special privilege and honor to welcome Dr. Ken Byrnes of Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Kale Houser Leadership Secrets podcast. Thank you so much for joining me. Today we have a special guest. I would argue one of my most preeminent guests that I've had so far, certainly within his field. This is Dr. Kenneth Byrnes from Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University out of Daytona Beach. Dr. Byrnes, thank you so much for joining me today. I really appreciate you sacrificing your time to be on this podcast.
Yeah, I'm happy to be here, Kale.
Fantastic. Well, for those of you that don't know or are not familiar, Embry-Riddle is essentially, if I'm not mistaken, the preeminent flight training facility for pilots, certainly within the United States. Is that a stretch, or is that pretty much accurate, Dr. Byrnes?
Well, it's accurate to the point, but it's much more than flight training. So for us, it's education. It's a 4-year degree granting institution with many programs, including PhDs in engineering and business, and most of it centers around aviation and space. And it's that's the main focus of this university. And honestly, we've been around. It'll be 100 years here in about 4 years, so we're pushing 100 years of existence.
Wow, that's pretty impressive. Now, you are the chairman of the flight training department. Is that correct? And then also an associate dean or assistant dean?
Assistant dean, yeah, but my main role is to manage and lead the flight training department at Embry-Riddle, and in the Daytona Beach campus. We have 2 campuses. We have one at Prescott as well, but the Daytona Beach campus is where I'm situated. We have the largest department in this university, operating close to 100 aircraft, flying 100,000 hours a year, with about 1,300 students at any given time, and flying in our airspace and learning how to be professional aviation professionals.
Right. Now, you're not only, of course, being the chair of that department, you're not only in charge of all those students, which that's 13, people, if you didn't catch that, that's 1,300 people that at any given time are in various stages of learning to fly an aircraft, right? With all those associated dangers and challenges. But you're also in charge of the staff, right? Your flight instructors, your mechanics, like, all told, like, what is your department made up of, all told, that you're overseeing?
So yeah, it's mostly flight instructors at any given time, between 150 and 200 plus flight instructors. And then we have a group of managers, operational managers, who oversee them. We also have our chief instructor and different support functions, flight dispatch, flight supervisors. We have aircraft maintenance, so a very large maintenance department, as you may imagine. We also have a very advanced simulation center with simulation staff to support as well. We also use a lot of student assistants. So we have over 300 full-time employees, and then we augment with close to anywhere from 50 to 100 students working different positions, dispatchers and student assistants and those types of things. So we're a rather large department. Yeah,
so I was trying to kind of mentally tally as you're going through that. So you're at any given time pushing almost 2,000. Was that kind of safe to say, like in that 1,800 to 2,000 range, depending on your season?
Yeah. So if you include all the students, we're up there at some point. There's actually, in the degree program itself for flying, there's over 1,700 students, and we only fly 1,300 at a time. So yeah, there's a lot of moving parts, a lot of moving people. That's for sure.
Right. That's incredible. Now, how long have you been the chairman at this in this position of the flight training?
So I have been in this role since 2009, so going on 13 years here.
Okay, so not a new hat. Now, I would imagine, and I'm assuming, did you come up through the university? Is that something you promoted into, or did you come into it fresh out of some other industry? How did you end up being the chairman?
Yeah, so I was promoted up through, I started many years ago as a flight instructor and just continued to work through at the time, September 11th had occurred, so there weren't many jobs in the industry, and continued to get educated and work my way through the ranks, up through various levels, and then eventually to the chairman role.
Fantastic. So now and of course you got to see it, right, from your previous chairmen that you served under and helped develop these programs. As you stepped into that role and it's been several years. What has been the primary difference that you saw from a leadership standpoint of stepping into that role, being new into that role, and having that level of responsibility versus now, 13 years later, presumably you've learned some lessons, you've kind of figured some things out. Like, how is it different 13 years later as that chairman and leading? Because certainly the university has gone through its stages and different levels of change. How have you adapted, and what are you doing now that's different than what was 12 years ago, 13 years ago?
Well, I've certainly matured as a leader, right? So I had the benefit of understanding the organization and working closely with the previous leaders of the organization and having a good idea as to what I would do different when I did get to role. And so that helped tremendously. But, I had different leadership roles all throughout my career here, going on 21 years now within this department. So, I already had some formation of being able to lead people and growing in that respect. But when you bring it up to the higher level, what maybe I didn't know right off the bat was that my primary job was to set the culture for the organization, to set the goals, right? And I did that right away, honestly. The first thing I did was basically we developed the goals. We did it together with some senior staff of the department. This is what's driven the department over the last 13 years. So growing in the leadership role, I would say I'm a more seasoned leader now. But I think when I stepped into it, I had a good idea about leadership theory, and that really helped me early on, right? So being able to set expectations for everybody day one, set the goals of the organization, and communicate really what the values and beliefs are of the organization, right? And building that organizational culture around that. That was the primary task going in.
I love it. Now, you mentioned, you touched on two things, and one, goals. Thank you for bringing that up, because I wholeheartedly agree that is absolutely critical to any organization, but especially when you've got a larger organization like yours. But you had mentioned about, as you stepped into the role, you knew there were things that you wanted to change, right? Things that you saw the previous chairman do, or however that flowed down. Was goals part of that? Did they not have goals or kind of that culture, organizational culture before, and you adapted that? Or was it something that just needed to change because there was that shift with you taking the helm?
Yeah, I think that was one of the biggest parts. The leader before me was outstanding. He was an incredible leader, still is, an incredible leader. But, I wanted to bring some clarity to that. Everybody knows that safety is primary, right? When you're in flight training. But I wanted to lay it out for everybody very clearly. So at this institution, because it's aviation focused, the communication level that I have, even above my level, with the dean and the provost and the president and even the board of trustees, I was able to get buy-in on those goals from the top all the way down. And it's been our mantra, right? And so even the goals themselves, there's 10 goals, and then we can sum them up into three categories, and that's safety, quality, professionalism, right? So safety, quality, professionalism, when you walk into this department, you feel that, right? You witness that. That's our identity, that's who we are, and it's very important that the goals are tied to that, right? So it took some time, obviously, for that culture to build and to make it that clear, but that is who we are, right? So it's on the walls, it's on the floors, and it's in the people. It's in the people you meet and communicate with. So
yeah, and that doesn't happen on accident, right? That wasn't just an idea you had of, oh, this is the kind of thing I believe in. You've been presumably very purposeful of that, and you're selling it not only to the people that come in below you, that serve under you as part of your organization, or even the students, but also your higher ups, right? The whoever's in charge, further up your chain in the university, right? It's a constant process, right?
Absolutely, yeah. So you have to have their support and their buy-in, and I'm blessed that they bought in right away, right? So, and to this day, every time I brief above my level all the way up to the board, that's my first slide. I actually haven't changed it in 13 years has our goals on it. Right? These are the goals, and now I'm going to tell you what we've done within these goals. And we develop objectives for every year based on those goals, right? And we work through those and measure those and those types of things.
Right. Now, how have you found, now certainly the university environment's a little different than kind of your typical workplace environment, because, you've got students that have paid to be there. They're paying to be there because they want something out of it, with the end goal of, whether it be a degree or their flight certifications, whatever that may be for them. How are you finding to get their buy-in into that culture? Is that something that's difficult? Is that something that you're continually changing with each kind of, because you've seen probably several kind of generations come in and different, levels of students and attitudes of students in general? Is that something that you're having to be super purposeful about? How do you get them to become part of the Embry-Riddle culture?
Yeah, so it's a very interesting, of course, when we're talking about culture, because how do you know a culture? You have to live in it. You have to be immersed in it in order to figure it out. But for us, our most important is the people within the organization working. Right? Are they involved with the culture? Do they believe in the culture? Or is it an espoused values on them? Right? Is it part of them too? And we find that it is, especially in the area of safety, and professionalism. And we are in a way, we're developing the next generation, and we're developing our next generation. So the way it works is students generally go through the program, they get their pilot certificates, and they end up working for us as flight instructors and then moving on to the industry, right? So the flight instructor, being a flight instructor, you're one-on-one with a student, and you're teaching them how to fly, but you're also mentoring them on everything other than flying, right? And this is where the key is for us. Is it's very important that our flight instructor staff understand the impact that they have on the students, and the fact that they're not just instructors or teachers; they're mentors, and they're guiding these people. These students, this is the first time most of them, a lot of them, this is their first brush with aviation in general, and what the requirements are for aviation, as far as the values and what's important and those types of things. And they're basically being mentored and developed by those flight instructors and by the organizational culture. So it's one of the reasons why it's so important for us. Is we don't just have a strong culture to have a good business. We have a strong culture because we're developing tomorrow's safety professional, right? And we need to have a very large impact on those people, because they're going to come through our system and they're going to go out in the industry, and they need to carry those values and beliefs with them. They need to change the industry or make it better constantly. So it's honestly, it's the most important thing we do. Anybody can learn how to fly, right? Anybody can take flight lessons. For us, it's the impact we're having on the people as they're coming through, and providing them what they need to be successful when they come out the other end. So
right, which I love that is part of, because essentially it's a whole person concept, right? You don't want somebody that just has their pilot's license when they graduate. You want an actual pilot. You want an airman. You want somebody that can handle the whole meal deal as far as being in the air and making, appropriate decision-making skills and all that. And I love that you touched on, it starts with your instructors. It starts with that frontline managers, supervisors, whatever you want to call them in your organization, but your instructors, that is the primary impact of the culture to the students, right? Is that kind of what I picked up?
Absolutely, yes. And it's through that mentorship it's so powerful. So if the instructor is complaining about the organization or complaining about ATC or whatever it is, it turns into that's what the student is doing, right? So it's critical. It's critical.
Now, do your instructors? So now touching on that, now I guess moving into a leader of managers type of role. What process do you have in place, or is it just part of your hiring process that, you are only looking for those certain type of people that have that attitude, or is that something you're trying to develop after you bring them on to your organization?
No, so, because most of them come through the organization now, and it's a very mature culture, they already have bought in for the most part, right?
Cool.
And what's interesting is I spend about 2 hours or so with every new hire class. And that's all we talk about. We talk about safety, quality, and professionalism, right? That's what we talk about for 2 hours.
Right, yeah.
I tell them, whatever job you get, you want to know what's expected of you, and that's why I'm here today, right? These are the expectations. They're focused on safety, quality, and professionalism. These are the goals of the organization. This is why it's important, right? So I make that case to them. And generally what will happen is, we're mentoring the instructors as well. A lot of them, it might be their first job, right? So,
right. Yeah.
So our frontline staff of training managers, who the instructors report to, are mentoring them as well and helping them grow into their role as educators, as teachers, as mentors.
Right.
So it's a nonstop process. We do have obviously an interview process that's pretty strong, and then we have a very robust standardization process as well to get them on board into the airplanes and simulators into teaching. So, and then we follow up with them. So our standards department does observation flights, but we also have a quality assurance department that does what I call mentoring flights. So, and the people that work there are actually called mentors, and they sit in the back seat of an activity, and they observe the instructor and basically give them pointers on what to do different and how to improve their teaching. That is mostly focused on their teaching side, but so we have a lot of systems in place to support them as they're coming through. But they generally because most of them have come through the organization, they show up understanding about that culture and what it is. And if they don't fall in line with it, right, they self-identify themselves rather quickly.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah. That's certainly something that if you're paying attention, the people that don't fall in line with your culture will self-identify. You just have to help them make that decision sometimes, right? For the decision that they've already made of like, this isn't for me. But I love, and I hope people that are listening to this are picking up, especially when you're talking about your mentorship program and that, your quality assurance department, right? You call mentors. Like, you don't have to do that. That's something that is purely you implemented as part of, and certainly, right, this falls in line with safety and, the liability issue, of course. But that's something that you could easily just hire that instructor, like, yep, he's qualified, he's passed all his FAA, check rides and all that good stuff. You can go teach, and you just let them go and do their thing. But you've been, again, I'm assuming going back to all your goals, going back to all your priorities. This is why you've implemented these additional, I don't know what you would call them, additional steps or additional checkpoints to ensure that your guys are meeting your cultural and hitting all those high priorities, specifically safety, certainly.
That's correct. Yeah. And so, we have two observation programs. The one for our standards department is more focused on, processes and safety. So the mentors are more focused on quality and professionalism.
Nice.
Right? So, and for the mentors, we tell them it's a no jeopardy. So the manager in charge of those processes, we don't release the information on who we're observing, right? The mentors basically sit down with that instructor, they debrief them afterwards, and the manager has that information, but it's not released to the organization that so-and-so is, not doing well teaching, right? The idea is let's help and guide them along the way, right? And have this program, and we want them to feel good about it. We want them to want to have people observing them and communicating with them. So right.
Yeah. To be that actual mentor instead of a judge, kind of a position, right? Yeah, maybe it's not the best idea to start screaming at your students, on short final kind of thing.
Exactly.
Other ways to do that. Well, I will say, I had the opportunity one time to fly in my little Cessna into Daytona as a night flight. And I thought I was super looking forward to it. I'd never been into that airport. And I don't know if it was a normal night for you guys. I forget what night of the week it was. But it was so busy with all of your guys going in and out of there, because I had planned on doing, I'm going to do a couple patterns, I'm like, you know what, I'm doing my one straight in and I'm getting the heck out of here. It is so busy. So I cannot even imagine, just the wherewithal that your guys have to have at any given time. And this is certainly true for a lot of flight schools, but man, I've been around other, flight school oriented airfields, and this was exceptionally busy But every single person I heard on that radio, besides ATC and even ATC, was professional. They were calm. There was never any, like freaking out that you hear at a lot of other airfields. So from an outsider perspective, I wholeheartedly commend my experience being in your guys' normal airspace. Was pretty impressive. A little too busy for me, but it was impressive how you guys handled it. So kudos to that.
It's busy. There's days where we have 370 flights off of our ramp. So I mean, so we start 5:30 in the morning and go to about 1 a.m. and when the sun is shining, they are flying. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Right? So,
the Embry-Riddle motto.
And we have to be. We have to have strong processes and procedures and training and all that in place in order to meet those goals. Right, with that size of an operation, there's just we have to focus on our culture. We have to understand what's going on. We have to have open communication with the crews. I tell one of my favorite things to tell the crews is, that I fly a desk. You guys are looking at it right now, right? I fly a desk.
Right.
Behind me out this window here is over 300 flight activities, and I'm not in the local airspace. I don't know what's going on. And we don't know what we don't know, so we need them to tell us. We need their feedback, their communication, and it works good. It certainly works good. That's one thing I've noticed over the years. This generation values the feedback, they want to be part of something, I guess, more, if that makes sense. So we find that they're more motivated by empowerment.
Okay.
Than in years past. So for them to give us feedback and then to see a change, right? We get more feedback and more communication. So that's been very positive over the past 12
Yeah, that is impressive, because I would say that's probably the number one way to kill, whether you call it morale or just buy-in, is when somebody brings you a suggestion and it just gets ignored or, swept to the side. I've certainly been in that position where I've brought a suggestion to my supervisor and my management, and they've essentially ignored it. And I'm like, oh, okay, well, there goes me bringing any sort of suggestions to you in the future, right? So again, going back to your culture, I love that you help people buy into that as they're part of that, instead of just being, sorry, this is my team, I'll do what I want. You're just a part of it. Shut up and sit down and do your job, right? So that's
right.
Great. Yeah.
I tell everybody we've been doing this almost 100 years, and the day that we stop trying to improve it is the day that we should shut the doors.
Yeah, absolutely.
We just got to keep going and keep making it better and safer.
Yeah. And because aviation, and specifically aviation, it is such a developing, sure, it's been around for, decades and decades and decades, but it's still always developing. Something's changing, whether it be the FAA, and certainly dealing with a government agency that's got its own challenges that you've got to wade through, and all your schoolhouse certifications that you've got to meet. But then just flying in general, everything, it's always changing, technology and rules and everything else. And certainly as you've adapted from 9/11 going forward with that, that's pretty impressive that you guys have kept your doors open, right, to meet all those challenges. Because certainly you can't say that of every flight school that's even been around for the last couple decades.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah, that's cool. Well, I do want to ask you, because I asked this of all my guests, because I talk a lot about the difference between a manager and a leader in an organization. And I was just hoping to get your opinion. In your opinion, there may not be a difference. They may be one and the same. But do you have any thoughts on that, the difference of manager versus leader?
Yeah, managers are antiquated and really not much of a place for that. Managers tell people what to do, right? So, and some people get a management role or a leadership role and they think that that's it. They're just going to tell people what to do. That's not how it works, especially nowadays. Leadership, on the other hand, they inspire people to want to do things. Right. So that's, and don't get me wrong, there's times I tell people what to do, right? Yeah.
Right. Yeah, you got it. Yeah.
But you got to do it in a way where they're going to want to do it. Right. So you have to find a way where you're basically, you're an influencer, you're a motivator. Right. And you're guiding the ship wherever, based on all the feedback you have or however you're getting it, the goals you develop, all of that, you're guiding the ship. But you can't do it without the people, right? I mean, and you're only as good as those people.
Yeah.
So you have to inspire them to want to do this type of thing.
Oh, right. Actually lead them somewhere, right? And show them the way. That's cool. I love that you said antiquated. I haven't had any guests say that before, but I would wholeheartedly agree that there in modern, well, really in any organization, there's really no room for managers without having that leadership aspect of it. Now, and I hope you don't mind we expand just a little bit, because I think this is so fascinating that you said this about, are you still having people show up? Because you said, some people just want to tell people what to do. And I'm sure in the, your 13 years of doing this and hiring people and letting people go and all that process is, what happens with those guys that show up and maybe they don't even make it into your organization, but the ones that show up that just want to be managers, they just want to have that positional authority to be able to tell people what to do because they're the boss and in charge. Like what happens with that type of personality in your organization?
So I think we're notorious for, and this happens in a lot of industries, taking people who are good pilots and thinking that, and good instructors, and thinking, no, now here's a group of 20 people, right? Yeah. So we know that they need support, we know they need mentorship, and we know they may need training, right, in order to get that across. So we provide that support as best we can. A lot of times there'll be an assistant manager for a while before they usually come up through the ranks as well.
Right.
So yeah, we're cognizant of it, and it's mentorship, right? So it's instead of the instructor mentoring the student, now it's the manager mentoring the new manager, or the leader managing the new leader, right?
Right.
And so on, and keeping an eye on them and helping them and guiding them through. So yeah, it's I wouldn't say there's an overly formal process for it, but that's what we're interviewing for.
Okay.
Right. When we're in the interview, we give them the scenario questions, and it's, if X, then what would you do? That kind of thing. Right. And that's the kind of thing I'm looking for. I'm not looking for, well, I would drop the hammer and tell this guy to go that way and that guy to go that way.
Yeah.
So it's like anything else. When you're, we're hiring, there's minimum qualifications, but then we're looking at personality. I say the same to every student here. I say, the airlines, there's a huge pilot shortage. They need pilots. And there's not enough pilots for them to hire. Why are they going to interview you? Why not just say, here's your resume? Why are they interviewing you? And it's those soft skills. It's that are critical to your success within an organization. And it's no different when we're hiring a manager or leader, I should say.
That's cool. Yeah, I love it. Having that process in place because you're not shoving people right into that position right away, right? You're giving that opportunity, because you touch on something too, like being a technical expert and whatever it is, whether you're, whether being a pilot, or test management or running that machine over there, does not necessarily equate to that you can help other people do that or lead other people in that same scenario. So that's great that you touched on that. All right. So maybe somebody's inspired now. They want to look into Embry-Riddle. How do people get a hold of either you, or if they want to look more into Embry-Riddle, what's the best way that they can get involved in your world that are listening?
Well, the best would be just to go to the website, erau.edu, and you can see all the programs that we have to offer there. There are the many, we have 4 campuses. We have one in Arizona, one in Florida. Those are our 2 main campuses, and the Singapore campus, as well as a worldwide component, an online component that also includes some physical locations at military bases across the world. So, we are all over the place. If you want to get involved with aviation, we're really the one-stop shop for any topic in aviation and aerospace.
Awesome. And there will be a link to Embry-Riddle in the description below, so make sure you click on that. Dr. Byrnes, anything else you want to say? Any last parting comments?
No, I think we covered it. Just appreciate the time. Appreciate you having me on.
No, I very much appreciate it. This has been fascinating, especially hearing from somebody that runs a larger organization and how you handle that day to day. So again, thank you so much for being on with me today. I really appreciate your time.
Very good. Thank you, Kale.
All right, everybody. This has been the Kale Houser Leadership Secrets podcast. Thank you for joining us today, and I hope you have a fantastic afternoon, no matter where you're at in the world. Bye.